The county auction never lasted long. Most parcels sold in minutes. Everyone already knew what they were worth. Then Parcel 18 appeared on the projector. The auctioneer sighed before reading. 72 acres. Former Callaway Farm. A few people exchanged knowing smiles. He continued. Landlocked except for an abandoned logging road. He flipped another page. Completely overrun by Multiflora rose. That earned a chorus of groans. The invasive shrub had spread across the property for more than 40 years. Its thorn-covered canes climbed trees, collapsed fences, covered creek banks, formed walls nearly 12 feet tall that neither people nor cattle could cross. Locals simply called it Briar Hill. The county had attempted mechanical clearing twice. The thorny shrubs grew back thicker. Contractors estimated it would cost more to clear than the land itself was worth. The auctioneer looked across the room. Opening bid. Silence. He lowered the amount. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Near the back, Margaret Hale quietly raised her paddle. I'll take it. Heads turned. Dale Harper rubbed his forehead. Not again. Someone laughed. Didn't she buy the bamboo place last year? Another rancher shook his head. Now she's buying 72 acres of thorns. The gavel struck. Sold. Outside, Nathan unfolded the county map across the hood of their pickup. You know, everyone thinks we've lost our minds. Margaret smiled. They said the same thing about the bamboo. Nathan traced the winding blue line crossing the property. The creek still interests you. It does. But not just the creek. What else? She pointed toward the oldest contour lines. Look where the original wagon road crossed. Nathan leaned closer. The road disappears. Exactly. If there was a crossing, there may still be one. The next morning they reached the abandoned entrance. There wasn't much of a road anymore. Multiflora rose completely blocked it. Thousands of thorn-covered canes intertwined into an almost solid wall. Bright red rose hips covered the branches. Birds darted in and out of the dense cover. Nathan carefully reached toward one cane. The thorns instantly caught his sleeve. They weren't kidding. Margaret nodded. Nature built herself a fortress. She knelt beside several fresh shoots. The leaves were young, soft, tender. She smiled. Nathan recognized that smile. You've already got an idea. I've had it for years. When Margaret was 15, Samuel Hale had stopped beside an abandoned pasture overrun with Multiflora rose. She stared at the endless thickets. It'll take forever to clear. Samuel smiled. Not necessarily. He pointed toward a neighboring farm. A small herd of goats disappeared into another patch of briars. Only rustling branches gave away their location. Minutes later, they emerged carrying leafy stems in their mouths. Margaret blinked. They eat roses? They eat almost everything green. He handed her a field guide. Inside, one paragraph had been underlined. Repeated browsing prevents woody shrubs from rebuilding enough leaf area to survive. Samuel looked across the pasture. People fight the thorns. What should they fight? The leaves. Margaret never forgot it. Years later, she attended a university workshop on biological invasive plant management. Researchers presented years of data showing rotational goat grazing dramatically reduced Multiflora rose without disturbing soil or nearby native trees. She filled an entire notebook. One sentence remained highlighted. Persistence beats force. Standing before 72 acres of briars. She remembered every word. Portable fencing arrived 3 days later. Nathan opened the livestock trailer. 160 Spanish and Kiko goats poured into the first paddock. Instead of avoiding the thorny shrubs, they rushed straight toward them. The goats ignored nearby grass, ignored clover, ignored fresh weeds. They stretched upward to strip every green leaf from the rose canes. Some balanced on fallen logs. Others climbed through the thorn maze as if it barely existed. Nathan laughed. I think they actually enjoy this. Margaret watched several goats pull entire leafy branches downward. They're harvesting solar panels. Within 2 weeks, the first section looked completely different. The thorny stems remained, but almost every leaf had disappeared. Sunlight finally reached the forest floor. Native grasses immediately began growing. Wild violets emerged. Young sycamores appeared where nobody realized seedlings had survived. The county extension forester visited shortly afterward. He slowly walked through the cleared paddock. I expected destruction. Margaret smiled. What do you see? He knelt. Dark soil. Earthworms. Native sedges. Tiny oak seedlings. The ecosystem was waiting. It usually is. The goats rotated into fresh paddocks every week. Each time they returned, they stripped every new leaf before the shrubs regained strength. By midsummer, entire hillsides began opening. Long hidden stone fence rows emerged beneath the dying briars. Nathan stopped beside one. This wasn't just a fence. Margaret examined the carefully stacked limestone. It was built by hand. Every stone fit perfectly without mortar. The county historian visited after hearing about the discovery. He unfolded an 1891 survey. "I've studied this property for years." Nathan looked surprised. "Why?" "The original Callaway farm helped supply timber camps." He pointed toward the faded map. "The old wagon road crossed the creek somewhere here." Margaret followed his finger. "But nobody knows where." The historian smiled. "Because the briars swallowed everything." The restoration continued. Late August brought another surprise. Nathan noticed unusually level ground beneath one newly cleared section. He brushed away leaves. Large flat stones appeared, perfectly aligned. Margaret joined him. "What do you think?" "I'm not sure." The historian returned the next day. His eyes widened immediately. "These aren't random." He carefully measured the spacing. This was definitely road work. Nathan looked downhill, toward the creek. The historian nodded. "I think so." The goats continued browsing another section closer to the water. The thorn walls slowly disappeared. Sunlight reflected through openings that hadn't existed in decades. One cool September morning, several goats wandered into an especially dense patch. Branches snapped. Leaves rustled. Then the herd suddenly spread apart. Nathan noticed something unusual beyond them. Gray stone, perfectly curved. He called Margaret. She climbed through the opening. At first she only saw moss. Then another arch. Then another. An elegant hand-built limestone bridge stretched across the narrow creek. Its graceful arch remained perfectly intact beneath decades of thorny growth. Clear water flowed beneath it exactly as it had more than a century earlier. The historian stood speechless. He slowly removed his hat. "I've spent 30 years looking for this." Margaret gently brushed moss from one stone. Tool marks remained visible. Still sharp. Still beautiful. Nathan looked beneath the arch. "The craftsmanship is incredible." The historian nodded. This wasn't an ordinary farm crossing. He studied the carefully cut limestone blocks. The county records mentioned a master stonemason passing through here around 1868. He looked back toward Margaret. "I think." He paused, almost afraid to finish the sentence. "You may have just uncovered the oldest surviving hand-built stone bridge in this entire valley." He called the county preservation office immediately. 2 days later, preservation engineer Rebecca Lawson arrived with surveying equipment. She spent nearly an hour inspecting every stone without saying a word. Finally, she looked up at Margaret. "I've got one question." Margaret smiled. "What is it?" Rebecca rested her hand on the weathered limestone parapet. "If this bridge is still here." She slowly looked upstream into another section of dying multiflora rose. "What else has been hidden along this old wagon road all these years?" Rebecca Lawson rested her hand on the weathered limestone parapet. "If this bridge is still here." She slowly looked upstream into another section of dying multiflora rose. "What else has been hidden along this old wagon road all these years?" The question lingered over the creek. Margaret smiled. "I suppose we'll find out the same way we found the bridge." "The goats." Rebecca laughed. "I never imagined I'd say this, but I owe my next survey to a herd of goats." The restoration continued through autumn. Every week the portable fencing shifted. The goats moved into fresh sections, stripping every new leaf from the multiflora rose before the shrubs could regain strength. Without leaves feeding the roots, the thorny canes slowly weakened. Workers never rushed. Instead of bulldozers, they used hand pruners and small saws to remove dead canes after the goats had done most of the work. The soil remained undisturbed. Young maples, white oaks, black walnuts, sycamores, all began reclaiming the hillsides. The county forester returned in October. He stopped halfway down the old wagon road. "I don't recognize this place." Margaret smiled. "It finally recognizes itself." He looked across the recovering woodland. Native grasses swayed beneath towering hardwoods. Goldenrod covered sunny openings. Wild asters bloomed where nothing but thorn walls had stood only months before. The forest never disappeared. It was trapped. Rebecca spent several weeks documenting the bridge. Every limestone block was measured. Every arch photographed. The bridge had survived almost untouched because the multiflora rose formed an impenetrable barrier around it. Ironically, the invasive plant that had hidden local history had also protected it from vandals, stone thieves, and heavy equipment. One afternoon, Nathan called from farther upstream. "Margaret." She followed his voice. Several goats were browsing another dense patch beside the old road. Beneath freshly cleared briars lay a row of enormous limestone posts, perfectly spaced. Rebecca examined them carefully. These supported something. The historian unfolded another survey. "I think I know." He traced a faded line. "There was once a timber loading platform here." Nathan looked around. So wagons crossed the bridge, loaded timber, then headed to the sawmill. The historian nodded. "The entire transportation route is still here." Over the following months, the discoveries continued. An old stone culvert, a hand-built drainage ditch, sections of original wagon wheel ruts hardened into the limestone. Even fragments of iron wagon hardware emerged beneath decades of thorn growth. Every discovery fit together like pieces of a forgotten puzzle. By early spring, 72 acres looked completely different. The thorn jungle was gone. Instead, rolling woodland spread across the hillsides. The restored wagon road gently descended toward the magnificent limestone bridge crossing the sparkling creek. Dogwoods bloomed beside the water. Trilliums covered shaded slopes. Wild turkeys wandered through open woodlands. Eastern bluebirds nested along restored fence rows. Dale Harper finally drove over. He climbed out slowly. I figured everyone was exaggerating. Margaret led him toward the bridge. He stopped halfway across. His weathered face softened. "I've lived 15 miles away my whole life." He ran his hand across the stone railing. "I never knew this existed. Neither did anyone else." He laughed quietly. "I called this place worthless. You weren't the only one. I owe you an apology." Margaret shook her head. "No." He looked puzzled. "You simply saw thorns." She smiled. "I saw what was underneath." Word spread far beyond the county. University ecology students began visiting every semester. Their professors used the property as a living classroom. Instead of studying invasive species in textbooks, students watched biological restoration happening in real time. One student asked Margaret, "Why didn't you clear everything with machines?" She picked up a handful of healthy woodland soil. "Because I wasn't trying to remove a forest." She let the soil fall gently. "I was trying to uncover one." The student looked toward the bridge. "So patience was faster." Margaret nodded. "In the long run, yes." The State Historical Society officially recognized the bridge the following summer. Experts dated its construction to approximately 1868. Master stonemasons had carefully shaped each limestone block by hand. Not a single arch had failed. The bridge remained structurally sound after more than 150 years. During the dedication ceremony, Rebecca addressed the crowd. "I've inspected hundreds of historic structures." She smiled toward Margaret. "This one almost never had the chance to be appreciated." She pointed toward photographs of the property taken before restoration. If heavy equipment had forced its way through these briars. She paused. The bridge could easily have been damaged beyond repair. Instead, the goats quietly opened narrow pathways, allowing every stone to be uncovered gently. The audience applauded. Later that afternoon, children crossed the bridge while volunteers explained its history. One little boy pointed toward the grazing herd. "Did the goats build it?" Everyone laughed. Margaret knelt beside him. "No." "What did they do?" "They helped us find something people forgot." The boy looked thoughtfully at the bridge. "So they're treasure hunters." Margaret smiled. "I think that's exactly what they are." By the third year, the former Callaway farm had become the Callaway Heritage Preserve. Walking trails followed the restored wagon road. Interpretive signs explained biological invasive species management. Visitors watched goats working rotational paddocks that kept new multiflora shoots under control every spring. Bird populations nearly doubled. Native shrubs returned naturally. Wildlife corridors reopened between surrounding forests. The creek, once buried beneath thorny vegetation, flowed freely beneath the elegant limestone arch. One quiet evening, Margaret stood alone on the bridge. The setting sun painted the stone golden. The creek reflected orange light beneath the arch. Goats grazed peacefully in nearby paddocks. Nathan walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You remember auction day?" She laughed. Everyone laughed. "They thought you bought 72 acres of thorns." Margaret looked across the restored valley. "They weren't wrong." Nathan smiled. But they weren't entirely right either. No. She rested her hand on the smooth limestone railing. Land is patient. He nodded. It waits. She looked downstream, where clear water disappeared into the forest. Sometimes history does the same. The bridge had survived generations of floods. It had survived neglect. It had survived decades hidden beneath walls of invasive briars. Not because anyone protected it, but because no one could reach it. The very plants everyone hated had unknowingly guarded one of the valley's greatest pieces of craftsmanship. Today, families cross that bridge every weekend. Students learned both ecological restoration and local history in the same place. Landowners visited from neighboring counties to see how goats could restore landscapes without destroying them. Every spring, when tender multiflora rose shoots emerged once again, the goats eagerly browsed them before the shrubs could reclaim the hillsides. Margaret often smiled as visitors admired the bridge. Because the bridge wasn't the greatest lesson the land had offered. The greatest lesson was that even the thickest walls of neglect rarely erase the past. Sometimes they simply hide it, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover it, one careful step and one hungry goat at a time.